Supposing that truth is a woman, what then? Is there not ground for suspecting that all philosophers, insofar as they have been dogmatists, have failed to understand women? That the terrible seriousness and clumsy importunity with which they have usually paid their addresses to truth have been unskilled and unseemly methods for winning a woman? Certainly she has never allowed herself to be won, and at present every kind of dogma stands with sad and discouraged men, if indeed it stands at all. The era of the Enlightenment has been one of light and dark, such as the way it always would have been as our technology and understanding developed. The modern age has tested faith. We have both gained insight into the world and lost the lights that shone forth the way. Our land is one of crumbling churches and carcasses, and carrion breed rampantly, swarming the skies in search of their next meal. We live in a twilight, the twilight of the idols. We live in the shadow of our religious past. Society is now shared between the religious and the secular, and these forces must contend with one another, one still cultivating the same crop year on year, but old and blind, the other chaotic, new, adrift and aimless, but full of energy and urgency, unlikely to disappear. You are not living in a normal age. Many amongst the storm of these forces are due to perish, but Nietzsche calls your spirit to soar upwards, in hopes that one day it may break from the storm of the modern age, peaceful and aloft. Here we will outline Nietzsche's vision, as put forward in the Twilight of the Idols. We will see how one might overcome the turbulence of today. In the midst of a gloomy and exceedingly responsible business, it is quite some trick to keep cheerful. And yet, what could be more necessary than cheerfulness? Nothing succeeds without high spirits playing their part. Excess of strength is the sole proof of strength. A re-evaluation of all values. This question mark so black, so immense. Let us not abandon ourselves to a nihilism about this project for now, and let our souls lead us upwards. How are we to understand this in its proper context? Since we have entered the twilight of the idols, no longer able to believe in the values of our past, our society has not immediately claimed its freedom. It is lost, just as the Israelites were lost once they escaped the tyranny of the Pharaoh. Nihilism runs rampant and knocks on every door, evidenced by our shallow materialism and unprecedented rates of suicide and depression. Why do we contend with this sickness in our day and age? Nietzsche's message might seem gloomy, but it is immensely hopeful. He believes the energy we have exerted towards our goals in the past, in which we no longer believe, has left us exhausted, ashamed, regretful. Here is the hope within Nietzsche's message. Nihilism draws close, but we feel we are in a state of futility. Let us not dash our hopes before we begin our quest for new values. Such a mission may well be something that requires the utmost of vitality and cheer. The antidote to our futility is to refuse to feel futile. Perhaps this will even be enough to save us. First key to Nietzsche's philosophy. Now I've got you, you nihilist. Sitting still is precisely the sin against the Holy Ghost. Only thoughts which come from walking have any value. Are you running on ahead? Are you doing it as a shepherd, or as an exception? A third case would be the runaway. First question for the conscience. Are you genuine, or just a play actor? A representative, or the actual thing represented? Ultimately, you are even just an imitation play actor. Second question for the conscience. Are you one who looks on, or who lends a hand? Or one who looks away and sidles off? Third question for the conscience. Do you want to go along with others, or go on ahead, or go off on your own? You must know what you want and that you want. Fourth question for the conscience. What are we to make of this, supposing truth is a woman? The clumsy philosophers of the past have been adept at generating their theories and their jargon, constructing arguments which appear logical, always with a witty response awaiting each objection. But if truth were a woman, perhaps these philosophers have done nothing to reveal what is really true, something more modest and subtle. The imbecile is convinced of their own drivel. Even worse is the smart imbecile who does the same. This is what happens when philosophers lack courage and virtue. When they lack a healthy physiology and attitude towards life, they become convinced by dogma and stagnating thoughts. Finer details are overlooked, since they have no wish to breathe the colder air of freedom. The truth can be revealed through an understanding of our own approach to truth and our own thinking. Are we genuine or a play actor? A voice for ourselves, what we have learned through our own individuality? Or do we speak for something else? Perhaps what we have been taught, but do not understand. Today this is as relevant as ever. We are standing on a precipice, the age of information. Soon AI systems will be able to create the most viciously realistic illusion and propaganda yet seen. And then we will have to ask, truly, is our identity our own, or are we play actors? How are we to find truth in such a world? These are the questions with which you must terrorize your conscience. Reason in philosophy. What are all the idiosyncrasies of the philosophers? For one thing, their lack of historical sense, their hatred of the very idea of becoming, their Egypticism. They think they are doing a thing in honor when they dehistoricize it, when they make a mummy out of it. All that philosophers have been handling for thousands of years are conceptual mummies. Nothing real has ever left their hands alive. Moral. Say no to anything which believes in the senses. To the whole of the rest of humanity. They are all just the populace. Be a philosopher. Be a mummy. Represent monotheism by miming a gravedigger. Above all, away with the body. Afflicted with every logical error that there is. Refuted. Even impossible, though it is cheeky enough to act as if it were real. This sentiment is echoed in the modern relationship to the so-called primitive thinking of the past. We see the symbols of the primitive world as crude and fallacious. We explain it through sociology or common reason. It leaves our hands as something dead and unmoving. To us it conveys little active meaning. The insufficiency of this is to be seen in the great disconnect between the actions of our ancestors and our current understanding. Lost technologies, a lack of understanding of how we built ancient architecture, a lack of understanding as to what possible use these structures could have had, despite the enormous amount of effort clearly put into them. Stone circles. Without a tyrannical reason, we have reached a high-mindedness about the world. We analyze with an Egypticism. We fail to see the forces of nature that course through every idea and each expression of human will. We have a collective amnesia. How the real world became a fable. The real world, attainable for the wise man, the pious man, the virtuous man. He lives in it, he is it. The real world, unattainable for now, but promised to the wise man, the pious man, the virtuous man. The real world, unattainable, unprovable, unpromisable, but the mere thought of it a consolation, an obligation, an imperative. The real world, unattainable, at any rate unattained, and since unattained, also unknown. Hence no consolation, redemption, obligation either. What could something unknown oblige us to do? The real world, an idea with no further use, no longer even an obligation, an idea become useless, superfluous, therefore a refuted idea. Let us do away with it. The real world. We have done away with it. What world was left? The apparent one perhaps. But no, with the real world we have done away with the apparent one. Nietzsche describes his philosophy as similar to physiology. He says that he acts as a physiologist in his work, diagnosing illnesses within the body, identifying when life is in decline. This is the declining man, increasingly disenchanted with the world, with the body, lacking trust in himself, until he has lost the real world that was once right before him. Promised another world by his wisdom, an escape from the chokingly uncomfortable reality he is within. Perhaps this so-called wisdom is nothing but the making of idols in one's own image, a revenge against the higher man, an avoidance of mankind and true human destiny, the inability to look upon Mother Nature's terrible face, an animal that has succumbed to a feeling of futility and decline. I'm not here to tell you Nietzsche is right, but these are questions that should terrorize your conscience also. Drifting into unconsciousness only fulfills their prophecy. Reality shows us a delightful abundance of types, the richness that comes from extravagant play and alteration of forms, to which some wretched loafer of a moralist says, "No, man should be different. He even knows how man should be, this maundering misery Gus. He paints himself on the wall and says, Ecce homo. I write to Zarathustra, after hearing his cackling thunder. Oh, the grievances these winds do stir. I feel them alongside you indeed. There is a wildness that is in your truth. What is it that we stand in awe at the dreadful? Forever the winds have been their stillest when they meet the rocky mountain face. Most graceful I have ever seen the winds was there. Most powerful there I have seen the sky. It is for rock to tame the wind. Forever man has built that which was above even the clouds. I extend my hand from the peaks of these mountains. Is my love not here?